rise for the presenting of the colors of CFW Post 2195.
Detail, attention, up. Advance. Prepare to post. Post. Present. Arms. Order. Arms. Present. Arms. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Texas salute. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Order. Arms. Detail. Order. Arms. Detail dismissed.
The Allen Heritage Guild is proud to once again be hosting Flag Day. This event commemorates the adoption of the flag of the United States. It happened on June 14, 1777, by a resolution of the Second Continental Congress. Today is also the 250th anniversary of the United States Army, the oldest branch of the United States military. Having been established on June 14, 1775 by the Second Continental Congress. As President Trump has stated, we honor its heroic legacy as the guardian of our sovereignty and of our fortress against tyranny, and we pay tribute to the millions of warriors who live by the motto, "This will defend." If you served in the Army, U.S. Army, would you please stand and be recognized? Thank you, Leader. I would like to welcome our city councilman, Tommy Berry, for the city greetings.
Honey, good morning. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. I want to thank the Guild. I want to thank the VFW, our jazz band, Daughters of American Republic, for allowing us to be a part here. On behalf of Mayor Brooks and my fellow colleagues on the Allen City Council, who I want to acknowledge, we have several of the members here today. We have Carl Clemensich, Ken Cook, Amy Knapp. We also have a former colleague and friend of mine, current friend, former colleague of mine, Dave Portman, and his beautiful bride, Lori. Day, personally in my life. As a young boy, I grew up as a military brat, traveling around the world, living overseas. My dad was in the military. And one of the things, if you've lived in the military, been in the military, you realize and you appreciate is you're always on the move. And you have to quickly learn to make friends. And in my life, when you're a young boy or a young child, you're trying to figure out what's constant. And what I had to discover quickly in a military family is three constants were: one, God; two, your family. And by the way, when you're a young boy, you really don't want your siblings to be that constant. But then the third thing, especially growing up overseas, when my dad was constantly stationed overseas, was the American flag. And it's something we just sometimes take for granted. Even my kids are living in the United States, but when you're overseas, growing up, you really come to find that American flag does represent home. That really does represent something that you can't see on a daily basis, but you know what it stands for. It's a great symbol for life. And I want to, reiterate what Paula said about our military. It does a great job, not just military, our men and women who serve in civilian clothes in locations that are in the dark corners and recesses of the world that don't get acknowledgement, who make this country safe. And I also want to recognize that it's this country, what makes the flag great is its communities. The flag represents the communities across this country, communities like Allen, Texas, and what makes up the communities are the people. And it's people like all of you, and like Paula, like our Daughters of the American Republic, like our VFW and our family, that make this flag have its value, if you will. And so I just ask you guys to just realize that you guys understand that you guys that is a symbol of what you guys put in every day in this community, and we really do, on behalf of the council, thank you for making this a special community, which in fact makes this country a great country. And with that, from the office of the mayor, whereas on June 14, 1777, the Second Continental Congress adopted the Stars and Stripes as the official flag of our nation, creating a lasting symbol of unity and liberty. And whereas this year marks 240 years of flying the American flag, known as Old Glory, a proud emblem of freedom, resilience, and the enduring spirit of the American people. And whereas the City of Allen and the Allen Heritage Guild take deep pride in honoring and displaying the United States flag as a powerful reflection of our community's patriotism, civic spirit, and shared beliefs in the values of democracy and justice for all. And whereas the Allen City Council encourages Allen residents to join together in commemorating Flag Day by proudly flying the United States of America flag, reflecting on the freedoms it represents and the sacrifices made to protect them. Now therefore, I, Babe Brooks, Mayor of the City of Allen, Holland County, Texas, do hereby proclaim the day of June 14, 2025 as Flag Day in Allen, Texas, and I urge all citizens to take cognizance of this event and participate in all the events and related thereto in this community. Thank you for allowing me to come speak.
Thank you, Tommy, and council people. We're glad that you're here with us today. We have the other distinguished guests that I don't know about, other than all of you, I guess. I want to acknowledge all of those who are helping us to celebrate today. VFW Post 2195, the VFW Auxiliary who passed out the flags, the General Bernardo de Galvez chapter of the NSDAR, and of course, Allen Community Jazz Band. And thank you all for coming today to help us celebrate and honor our American flag. We are honored at this time to have local DAR Regent Sandy Reedy, who will read I Am the Flag.
Good morning. I am the flag of the United States of America. My name is Old Glory. I fly atop the world's tallest honor, truth, and justice. I stand for freedom. I am confident. I am proud. When I'm flown with my fellow banners, my head is a little higher, my colors a little truer. I bow to no one. I am recognized all over the world. I am saluted. I am loved. I am revered. I am respected. I am feared. I have fought in every battle of every war for more than 200 years. I was flown at Valley Forge, Gettysburg, Shiloh, and Appomattox. I was there at San Juan Hill, the trenches of France, in the Argonne Forest, Anzio, Rome, and the beaches of Normandy, Guam, Okinawa, Korea, and Quezon, Saigon, Vietnam, know me. I was there. I led my troops. I was dirty, battle-worn, and tired, but my soldiers cheered me, and I was proud. I have been burned, torn, and trampled on the streets of countries I have helped set free. It does not hurt, for I am invincible. I have been soiled upon, burned, torn, and trampled in the streets of my country. And when it's done by those whom I've served in battle, it hurts. But I shall overcome, for I am strong. I have slipped the bonds of earth and stood watch over the uncharted frontiers of space from my vantage point on the moon. I have borne silent witness to all of America's finest hours. But my finest hours are yet to come. When I am torn into strips and used as bandages for my wounded comrades on the battlefield. When I am flown at half-mast to honor my soldier. Or when I lie in the trembling arms of a grieving parent at the grave of their fallen son or daughter. I am proud. I am the flag of the United States of America. Thank you, Sandy. That always rings true.
Our guest speaker today is Petty Officer Frank Stepka. I would like to introduce you to someone that you've all seen many times at various celebrations in Allen. Frank was born in 1950, and by the time he graduated from high school, the Vietnam War was well underway. He enlisted in the United States Navy and served 2 tours in Vietnam. After his service in the Navy, he moved to Allen and got heavily involved in the Color Guard and Honor Guard with the Veterans of Foreign Wars. His total time wearing that uniform is over 40 years. He is here to talk about his time in service and thereafter. Would you welcome Petty Officer Frank Stepka?
This isn't our first time doing this. Paul's had us up here more than a few times. I see a lot of the familiar faces. If this is your first time here, raise your hand, please. That's great. Number one, thank you for your patriotism. Number two, I hope you come away from here today with a little bit of knowledge and a little bit more pride in that flag. As Paula said, when my dad served, he was rather proud. I had heroes growing up. Some of you remember them, some of you won't. It was Batman, Superman. I was about 7 years old. Dad took me out to the backyard. It was late at night. He's looking up. So I started to look up. I said, Dad, look, there's a shooting star, but it's moving slow. He says, that's what I wanted to show you. That's Sputnik, Russian satellite. In the 50s, people were building bomb shelters to protect us in case the Soviet Union attacked us. We know now, in a nuclear attack, yeah, you just dug your own grave. You spent a lot of money on that. It was that night my dad told me about his tour of the Navy. He served aboard the USS Intrepid aircraft carrier. The crew referred to her as the Fighting Eye. Department of Navy referred to her as the dry eye because she was hit so many times, the most hit ship during World War II. They spent all that time at dry dock to get repaired. Dad was on the flight, on the flight deck, directing traffic for the airplanes at that time to leave and attack the Japanese. My second hero became my Uncle Joe. I found out that he was over in Europe. He served in the Battle of Bulge. And that changed World War II. When it came my time, I enlisted. It made sense. I received 5 orders at Cleveland Hopkins Airport, waiting for my flight to take me to Great Lakes for basic training. Those 5 orders were simple. Keep your head down, keep your eyes open, keep your mouth shut. That's a good one. Keep your head down, your eyes open, your mouth shut, and come home to mom and I kept those and kept keep your mouth shut. I have a way of talking that, no, I don't need a microphone. Everybody can hear me, right? I kept those 4 orders that my dad gave me, except for keep your mouth shut. I can tell you about my actual experiences in Vietnam. The first tour was on the gun line, shelling off the beach at the Mekong Delta. My second tour, I was detached with the United States Army as one. They needed medics, and I was made available immediately. As we're hovering in this chopper, the door gunner looked at me and says, it's only 30 feet down this road. Try to make it down as fast as you can while I'm shooting at the guys that are shooting at you. Record time, folks. I'm down. About after a week and a half, I looked at the platoon leader and I said, Vietnam sucks. He looked at me, he says, good thing, it's about 17 clicks that way. We went back to Da Nang after about 2.5 months in the jungle. Just in time to hear President Richard Milhouse Nixon say, we have not, nor shall we ever cross the borders into Cambodia and Laos. Now think of the 17 clicks, what is that, a suburb of Vietnam? How does that work? No, I was in Laos, on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. My close encounters, I should have died 4 times. Aboard my ship, February 5th of 1973. I got married April 15th, Cat's Day. My dad says you're allowed to get your anniversary once, and then she won't let you forget it. I was married on April 15th. June we deployed again. I'm back in Vietnam. We got home, no casualties. February 5th of 1973, we had a boiler explosion aboard the ship. It killed 7 crew members. As a foreman, I knew everybody aboard that ship. And it hurts. Especially when you have to escort one of those bodies home. Flag waved over. You're going to hear the flag mentioned a lot today. I was interviewed for a promo video for this presentation. And you know how Johnny Carson, he asks you a question, and he doesn't want yes or no. He wants to tell me something. He says, what does that flag mean to you? And I said, everything. Ask the ladies from Daughters of the American Revolution. when we were fighting against the British for our freedom, what did that flag mean to them? Everything. When the 6th Marines hit the top of Mount Saragushi during World War II to raise that flag, what did that flag mean to them? Everything. When a fireman stands at ground zero and raises a flag in New York City, what does that flag mean to him? Everything. You're at a funeral and you have that flag raised across the coffin. Family member or close friend, what does that flag mean to you and to that family? Everything. I'll say it was minor PTSD, never went to the VA for it. I cured myself pretty much. My first point of closure, I worked at the General Motors Assembly Plant in Arlington, Texas. I could leave work at 4:30 and get home about 6:45. Bush wasn't open at the time. I found if I got out of work at 4:30, stopped and had a couple of beers, I could be home by 6 o'clock. No brainer, right? Having a couple of beers, you know, I walked in this one day in particular. The talk at the bar was about Vietnam. It started off stupid and then got ugly. The barmaid knew me and I said, I'm just gonna go sit down. And she said, got it. Little do I know, there was a kid following me. I sat down, he says, can I join you? Before I could say yes or no, he said, he looked at me, he says, you were there. I said, yeah, and I looked at him in the eyes and I said, you were there as well. How can you tell? I can see it in your eyes, you were there. He says, yeah, I was there for about 2.5 months. I got hit, and I got hit bad. The last thing I remember before I passed out was seeing a step in a rose. I'm sorry, what did you, I saw a step and a rose. He says, passed out, woke up in the Philippines, they're still pulling crap on my stomach, told me I got my ticket home. I'm sorry, what did you see? I can't describe it. I saw a step in a rose. I asked him if he's going to be there for a little bit longer. He says, yeah, maybe another beer. Went outside of the payphone, called Best Western, right down the street. I crawled that car. Then I called my wife. I said, not coming home tonight. She says, you're working late? And I said, no, I'm going to get screwed up. Told her what I knew, and she said, be careful. I said, I booked a room for him. Walked back into that bar, got him a beer, myself a beer, went back to the table, and I sat down. I said, what did you see? I can't describe it. A step and a rose. From the time I was about this tall, my nickname became Step. The last name of Stepka, Step. On my forearm here, there's the name Step, and behind it is a rose. I know I brought one guy home. He died about 18 years ago. He lived in Bedford. I lived in Allen. Of course, my home record is Cleveland, Ohio. What are the chances of the two of us meeting there? I got my closure for Vietnam. I've always had pride in that flag. And I was asked to join the VFW to put on this uniform. We parade flags, we post flags, as you've seen done this morning. And we bid a farewell to another fallen veteran at his memorial service. Putting on this uniform. Closure point number 3. Closure point number 3, which was probably the hardest hurdle for me to hit, showed that there was boiler closure. Men were coming out of Bravo 3 to the boiler room. The best way to describe it, their skin looked like the wax moving down the side of a can. It was not pretty, folks. I helped one guy by the name of Mike Soul. We got him to the officer's wardroom where we set up a triage. And I was told there's no room for him. Keep him comfortable on the deck. Mike kept begging me for some water. I'm a foreman. Burns like that, water, shock, you're gone. The best I could do is dab a towel and hit his lips with water. They finally made room for him, and I helped him in and laid him down on the table. Big conversation. And the captain walked up and he said, "Frank, there's no room for you here. Can you please go outside?" "Yes, sir." As I turned, Mike grabbed my arm. And he said, "Steph, I'll see you later." That was the last time I saw Mike. I joined the USS Basilone Association. That was the name of my ship. Navy destroyer named after John Basilone, Gunnery Sergeant, United States Marine Corps. The only enlisted man received the Congressional Medal of Honor and the Navy Cross during World War II. Men didn't love her because she was a great ship. She was a great ship because the men loved her. Joined the association. Went to my first reunion and I inquired about Mike. They told me that he passed away 2 years earlier. My heart was heavy. Steph, I'll see you later. Got on Facebook and somebody had posted a picture or one of the pages from our cruise book and took Mike's picture and circled it. Her name was Tony Lynn Falcone. And I private messaged Tony and I asked her, I said, I served on Basilone with Mike. Can I call you? And she replied, yes, and gave me your phone number. I asked her a couple of the oddball questions, you know. And I'd ask her, I think it was the fourth question. I said, well, how does Mike handle this? I don't know, let me ask him. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike's soul is alive and well and living in New Hampshire. That was my final point of closure. I was told you could tell your stories, or when you can tell your stories without bursting into tears, you're on your way to recovery. It was not a pretty war. I had things thrown at me. I was spit on. I was a Navy corpsman accused of being a baby killer and a mercenary. My dad was the first one to welcome me home, and I became a closet veteran for basically 7 years. Nobody wanted it. Nobody believed in military. Forgot to mention that there's no quiz afterwards. I hope none of you are taking notes. Star Spangled Banner. Francis Scott Key. He was a lawyer and a poet, being held as a prisoner of war aboard a British frigate at Malta to Chesapeake Bay, where the British were bombing, excuse my language, don't say it, they were bombing the hell out of Fort McHenry. This flag inspired him so much, he had to know if his flag was still flying. By the way, the Star Spangled Banner has 15 stars and 15 stripes. The song, or the poem that Francis Scott Key wrote, became our national anthem. Our national anthem only takes the first stanza of this poem. There's 3 more stanzas. People don't know that. And Mr. Logan, where are you at here? music in England. That's what I feel about the flag. It means everything. The three men sitting in front of you, it means everything to them. At this time, I'm going to ask the balance of my unit to come up here, and we're going to show you the proper way to fold the U.S. flag.
There are 13 folds in the American flag. Any time the flag is taken down, it's folded this manner to present honor to our nation and the flag. My thought it was to symbolize the original 13 colonies. And here's one story as dear to many veterans and their families. The story is told while others fold the flag. We first present the flag as if we're flying. The first fold of our flag is a symbol of life. The second fold is a symbol of our belief in eternal life. The third fold is made in honor and remembrance of the veterans departing our ranks who gave a portion of their lives for the defense of our country to attain peace throughout the world. The fourth fold represents our weaker nature, for as American citizens trusting in God, it is to Him we turn in times of peace as well as in time of war and for His divine guidance. The fifth fold is a tribute to our country, for in our words of Stephen de Couture, our country, in dealing with other countries, may she always be right, but it is still our country, right or wrong. The sixth fold is where we pledge our hearts lie. It is with our hearts that we pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The seventh fold is a tribute to our armed forces, for it is through the armed forces that we protect our country and our flag against our enemies, whether they are found within or without the boundaries of our republic. The eighth fold is a tribute to the one who entered into the valley of the shadow of death, that we may see the light of day. The ninth fold is a tribute to womanhood and mothers, for it has been through their faith, their love, loyalty, and devotion that the character of man and woman who have made this country great has been molded. The 10th fold is a tribute to the Father, for He too has given His sons and daughters for defense of our country since they were first born. The 11th fold represents the lower portion of the seal of King David and King Solomon, glorifies in the Hebrew's eyes the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The 12th fold represents an emblem of eternity and glorifies in the Christian's eyes God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The 13th fold, for when the flag is completely folded, the stars are uppermost, reminding us of our nation's motto, in God we trust. After the flag is completely folded and tucked in, it takes on the appearance of a cocked hat, ever reminding us of the soldiers who served under General George Washington and the soldiers and Marines who served under Captain John Paul Jones, who were followed by their comrades and shipmates in the armed forces of the United States, preserving for us the rights, privileges, and freedoms we enjoy today. That, ladies and gentlemen, are the 13 folds of the American flag.
Jazz band.
colors. Detail, retire. Allow me.
This concludes our program today. As I said, join us for the flag retirement and bugle calls outside. Thank you so much.